Jeff, welcome to Hospitality Talks.
Hi, Abid. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. Jeff, Six Senses has been in a leadership role relative to sustainability. So help us understand the culture. How is it that that culture has been nurtured within the organization for a long time?
Sure. I mean, it's a good question because I think it's really important for any hotel brand who's serious about sustainability is to really generate this culture of caring about sustainability, of making it something that's forefront and not an add-on to the way that the hotel is run, but actually core to running the hotel and embedded into the operations of every department. So we have processes to do that. Like team events, you kind of team building events where we go out and help in the local community or help with the local environment, and training around sustainability that we run, and it's built into our management processes, and our review process has a component around sustainability performance.
Jeff, we were talking about measurements. Any key matrices that you can shed light on that you guys measure and there has been an improvement over a period of time?
Yeah, I mean, we track a few data points around sustainability. We have like monthly data that we track on all of our energy, water, and waste. We also track some fun stats in that, for example, how much compost we produce, how many products we can upcycle out of our used glass, how many products we can upcycle out of our used timber or wood products. We also track, and we're going to talk about plastic, I'm sure, in a moment. We track how many pieces of plastic we can eliminate through our properties. So yeah, quite a few. And of course, there's always anecdotal stories that come out of those, but I think what's more important, and going all the way back to the beginning of our talk and what Stuart was going over, is really looking at the bigger data and trends on energy, water, and waste, and trying to help hotels understand the opportunities to reduce their energy or their water or waste, and always tying it back to the financial returns that are built into that as well.
Well, I think, thank you for that. You brought up plastics, and I know Six Senses has our target to be plastic-free by 2022. Can you shed some light on that target? It seems like a pretty aggressive target. Tell us how that came about, what type of initiatives have been put into place that are helping you achieve that target.
Sure. Yeah. So Plastic Free 2022 is it's our revised strategy around plastic. I guess it goes all the way back to the origins of our brand, which is more than 20 years old. We've never had the single-use shampoo amenity bottles. We got rid of all of our plastic water bottles in 2003. We got rid of our plastic straws in 2016. And in that time, the world has really woken up to this issue of plastic, which is fantastic, and that's great. Of course, our aim is to be a leader on sustainability. So we took a really deep dive into all the science around plastic and the impacts on the environment and where plastic comes from and all that, those sort of things. And we made this really bold decision to, rather than taking one more incremental step forward on plastic, what do we eliminate next? We decided, why have any plastic? And that's actually our aim, is to be completely free of all plastic in our operations in the year 2022. Our priority is single-use plastic, but actually we want to push it as far as we can and eliminate every single piece of plastic, if possible, from our operations.
Jeff, when you think about plastic, particularly in hotels, water bottles are the first thing that come to mind, or single-use amenity bottles come to mind. Tell us some of the things that we might not even think about when we think about plastic use in our operations.
Sure, and yeah, you're right. Those come to mind. They're very. they're literally in your face. Plastic straws, plastic water bottles. We interact with them, so they're pretty obvious. What we did is, and in 2018, kind of rolling out this revised strategy, Plastic Free 2022, we did an inventory of all the pieces of plastic in our hotels and spas and our offices. So literally walking around with clipboards, looking around, counting all the pieces of plastic we could find. And we learned a lot from that, and we've gone through that data again recently to kind of update our strategy and our implementation. And one of the things we saw was packaging. Packaging plays a huge role in the plastic that comes into a hotel, and it's completely unseen by the guests, right? Well, not completely, but mostly. I think a great example from Michael earlier was vegetables, single-wrapped vegetables that come in, which are so wasteful. Absolutely hit it on the head in terms of not just the material cost, but the manning cost to the hotel to unwrap all those things and manage that material and move it around the hotel just to get rid of it. Packaging plays a huge role. We're also looking at things like if there's an opportunity to get a metal bucket or a wooden broom instead of a plastic bucket or plastic broom. We're looking at all those kinds of opportunities to eliminate plastic. And it's because we're not only looking at this as a waste management issue, which of course it is, but looking at the product life cycle impacts of these plastic items and understanding where does plastic come from. The fossil fuel extraction phase, the manufacturing phase, the processing, the transportation, and knowing that there's leakage of plastic into the environment through all those phases. And ultimately, if we're going to stick to the Paris agreements and the 1.5 degrees Celsius targets that the whole world has agreed to, these fossil fuels have to stay in the ground, which means we can't create any more virgin plastics. And plastic really is, when you really dive into this and understand where it comes from, plastic is a climate issue as well as a waste management issue.
You talked about the impact on the entire cycle and keeping that in mind from production to transportation to consumption, and then if there is recycling to be had. I think that's a great way to look at it, but we've all gotten used to the creature comforts, particularly in hospitality, quite candidly. I don't know if I feel 100% comfortable using a glass bottle of water versus a plastic bottle of water, because I know it has not been used or it's particularly sanitized. How have you educated the guests relative to reduction in plastics and educated your teams?
It's a really valid point, and it's interesting if you kind of roll that back and think about the origins of that question. Back in the 1970s, the plastics companies, and which is really the fossil fuel companies, petrochemical industry, had a huge PR campaign to educate people, to re-educate people to accept plastics, to condition us to feel okay about a throwaway culture, and that sort of thing. I think it's a very interesting that we're at this point now where we feel more comfortable drinking from a single-use plastic bottle than a perfectly clean glass. And the question that we should be asking ourselves is, how clean is that bottle, and why would you assume that because it's a single-use plastic, or if you wrap something in plastic, does it mean that it's cleaner? And is the plastic itself clean before it's wrapped on that item? And how do you know, right? I mean, where does the plastic film get made? And how clean is that factory? But we're all conditioned to think if something's wrapped in plastic, it must be sterile, which is something that I would like to question, and I think we should all question that. Really, to your question, to your point, the question you've asked is, what do we do to educate our guests? Well, not too much. I don't feel that we have to do that much, and I think it's also part of this question of luxury hospitality, which is of course the segment that we're in with Six Senses, and that's we would never serve our guests food and give them a plastic fork and knife, right? It's nice silverware, and that same thinking we try to apply to everything we do. Single-use plastic is cheap; it's not luxury. And I think that feeling permeates still enough through our guests' frame of mind that it's not that hard to understand that we want better than plastic items.
And you're absolutely correct. Plastic is one of the largest pollutant, but it is deemed very convenient, and we've all gotten used to it. I remember when National Geographic's had their cover story with a plastic bag and just a corner of the bag sticking out from ocean water, looking like an iceberg, where a majority of it was below water. It is still a huge challenge. I will turn it over to Sam here in a little bit. Are you well on your way on achieving your 2022 target? What sorts of hurdles have you come across as you are progressing towards that goal?
I wouldn't say we're well on our way. And we knew when we set this as our goal that it was an impossibly high bar to reach, which is partly why we set it so high. Is we wanted to try to push it absolutely as far as we can. Understanding the human health impacts of plastics, the wildlife impacts of plastics, and where it comes from, and everything I've mentioned, and also understanding our brand positioning. We already had and still have a preference for natural materials. We build our hotels with a lot of wood and stone, and so plastic is a bit of a sweetheart issue for us to begin with, but we still decided that based on the impacts that it creates through the product life cycle, that we'd like to question every plastic item in our operations. Are we close to being completely plastic free? No, I wouldn't say we are. We're very pleased to note, and our key metric on this initiative is the number of pieces of plastic we eliminate per year. So that number is naturally skewed towards single-use plastics because there's more of them per year. And that's how we're tracking our progress. So it is nice to see the numbers of items that we've been eliminating. And I think the plastic water bottles have been mentioned a few times already today, and we're right now tracking at about 1.8 million plastic water bottles per year that we're eliminating out of our operations or avoiding. 26,000 plastic toothbrushes per year, over 1 million coffee capsules per year. Some interesting things like over 84,000 plastic egg cartons that we've been able to get out of our operations. 40,000 plastic vacuum bags that are used in kitchens. So it's not just front of house guest facing items, but it's also in the back of house where we're able to make these impacts. And that's part of our whole campaign or initiative with Plastic Free 2022 is to celebrate all of these steps forward and to keep looking for more opportunities to get rid of pieces of plastic.
Well, those are some great accomplishments. Congratulations, Jeff, to you and your teams for being able to make that difference. Let me turn it over to Sam, and I'll be back with you. Sam, over to you, please.
As a company, you are very well versed in social media. Over 50,000 on viewers or followers on Facebook, and then a staggering amount, over 100,000 followers or subscribers on Instagram TV, which makes me extremely jealous. So I'm just kind of curious of, after I've been looking at some of your Instagram TV, which is the Instagram TV channel, I was looking for something related to sustainable. I didn't see so much being mentioned there. So I was wondering, what is your strategy to educate your not only your current customers, but your target customers about the great best practices of sustainability in your resorts?
Thanks, Sam. So, I mean, I'll start off with my short answer is that's probably a better question for our head of communications and not our head of sustainability, myself. However, we did have a week of sharing sustainability stories last month. So if you go back a couple weeks, you'll see some live videos that we did share. There's content on our website around this. We actually do more of this kind of stuff in person at the hotel. So I do definitely see as part of our mandate on sustainability is to reach out, to educate, to engage with our guests, and we see it as a huge opportunity. If even just one of our guests while they're on a stay with Six Senses. If we're able to connect with them in around a topic that's meaningful to them, where we can help them to give back to the environment or the community, or to even take skills with them home where they can live a lower impact lifestyle, that's an opportunity we want to jump on. So we actually have a dedicated space for this in all of our hotels, and we call it Earth Lab. The Earth Lab is a space for engagement and innovation. We host workshops there that are free. Guests can drop in. They're on our weekly event schedule and learn things about what we're doing in the local community or what we're doing for the local environment. But more importantly, to learn skills that, like I said, that they can take home with them. So we'll do workshops where we do things like how to make beeswax wraps, which you can, so by using beeswax and fabric, you can make a wrap that is useful in your home kitchen, that helps you to eliminate single-use cling film in the kitchen. We do things like how to make your own toothpaste, so you don't have to buy toothpaste in those non-recyclable tubes. The list goes on, and I won't go through all the workshops now. And we also have a YouTube playlist of these workshops people can access online. So there is some content out there if you look for it. We don't shout a lot about what we do on sustainability, and arguably maybe we should shout a little louder. But it's definitely something that we feel is important.
Very good. I mean, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of our broadcast, I mentioned that you're one of the leaders in the industry relating to sustainability. So just a hint to the head of communication, talk a little bit more about sustainability. I think you deserve a little bit more space than on YouTube, the channel, and so on. But because I think what you're doing is so powerful, particularly on the property level, and that's where the stories could be told on Instagram TV rather than anything else. So I'm really proud to hear what you're doing. I'm interested now if you turn to the employees, the associates of the resort, and many of them who may have hotel experience, may not have experience, but you're bringing them into a place where the culture is very much related to sustainability. How do you, in the training aspects, how do you go about in giving them that sense of that they are now in the Six Senses and there is a culture about sustainability?
Sure, and as I said earlier, it's so important to foster that culture. It starts from day one. So with orientation training, we go through, like I'm sure every company does. This is our brand values, our mission, that sort of thing. And there's a sustainability component to that orientation session. It's important, I think, at that stage to make it really hands-on and not overly complicated. So, we use as an actual training exercise, we use our gardens. Every Six Senses has an organic garden. Every Six Senses does composting of our food waste and landscaping waste. So we use that. We know it's there in every hotel. So let's get up, leave the training room. We're all going to go outside. We're going to walk into the garden. This is where the compost happens. Let's all, plant a carrot, pull a carrot out of the ground, take a bite, eat it. There you go. You've connected with sustainability. And on a very basic, fundamental level, and we can mention how this is full circle, that we get food from the garden, we compost what's waste, we put that nutrition, that value back into the soil, and we've completed the circle. And where's your role in that circle? You've eaten the carrot. So, and that's a simplistic example, and we don't do exactly that at every hotel, but it's important that we keep it, simple, not oversimplifying it, but the worst thing to do for someone as an introduction to sustainability is sit them into a classroom and lecture to them for 2 hours, or have them read a textbook, right? Because they'll go running. So we try to make it meaningful and something that people can relatable, to make it really relatable from day one.
Great. Those associates are part of a community which is outside the resort. So how about the outreach to those communities? Because many, perhaps some of those suppliers of hotels are from that community. Maybe they are local fishermen or farmers and so on. What is the education or involvement of embracing them to be part of that Six Senses culture, if you will?
Yeah, sure. And ideally, our new hosts or our staff, when they come on board, ideally they are from the local community and they would have heard of our sustainability efforts before joining. Especially if it's an existing hotel with some reputation in the local community. We have funding that we set aside for local community projects and local environmental projects, and those can take the shape of equipment for the local hospitals, educational programming in the local schools. We place teachers in the schools. We have educational programming that we will deliver by visiting the local schools. So there's touch points with the local community throughout that programming that we provide, and that extends, of course, because we want to be active players in that local community. We're part of that community, and it's social. And it's business relationships. So we also have outreach for our local suppliers, and that plays a big role actually in how we manage waste. So our number one, the top of our waste pyramid is waste avoidance. To refuse waste, we refuse and then reuse, reduce, recycle for Six Senses. And the refusal stage is really talking to the suppliers and saying, no, we really don't want that waste. We don't want that packaging. So we're really big on supplier take-back programs, which works well with short supply chains. It's very difficult to do with long and complicated supply chains. But when it's you mentioned the local fishermen, so that brings to mind some great programs we have at several of our hotels where we work with the local fishermen. We've talked to them about how we don't want to have those styrofoam boxes coming in with the fish, and actually here's a reusable cooler. This is your cooler. We'll put a number on it. It's now yours. Please bring this every time, and we'll empty it and give it back to you. And we have great feedback from those programs. At first, they think we're crazy and they don't want it because change is difficult and it's scary and all those other things. No one likes change, right? But at a very quick turnaround, these local suppliers with the take-back programs really adopt it and love it and want to do more, because they immediately see a return on that by not having to buy these single-use packaging items. They save money and their business is stronger, and it's a big success.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to bring Abid back here for the discussion, and perhaps Abid have a few more questions before we bring everyone to the screen.
Thank you, Sam. Jeff, has this pandemic helped or hindered your efforts in reducing the plastics at the hotel? Because the industry had adopted getting rid of the single-use amenity bottles, for example, or not having water bottles in the rooms. But I understand that some of that is having to be placed back in the guest rooms just for safety reasons. What have you guys done, and how have you attended to that?
Well, it's a very relevant question, isn't it, right now? There's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear. And forgive me for correcting you, Abid, but these things are not being placed in the rooms for safety. It's a public relations response. A lot of governments are forcing hotels to bring back in single-use plastics. But it's important to keep in mind that plastic is known to be a surface that the virus can survive on. Fabrics it does not survive as well on as solid surfaces like plastic. And back to what I said earlier, wrapping something in plastic doesn't make it cleaner. For example, plastic gloves, and in a few jurisdictions, some governments are requiring, not just in hospitality and other industries, people to wear plastic gloves. You don't contract the virus through the skin on your hands. So having a barrier of the skin on your hands does not prevent you from contracting the virus. And in fact, wearing plastic gloves, and anyone who's worked in a kitchen would know this, often encourages or discourages, I should say, people from washing their hands, because there's a false sense of security. I'm wearing plastic gloves, I don't need to wash my hands. But if you have plastic on your hands, you're just as able or more able to spread the virus with those gloves on than you are without them. You still need to wash your hands with soap. Right? So, and that's just taking one example, but I think it's important in all of this is to take a step back and recognize that there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of PR responses to the pandemic happening right now, and it's important to take any measures that are taken should increase safety first and foremost. And if you're introducing single-use plastic and it's not actually increasing safety, we definitely shouldn't be introducing it.
Well, look, I was at a farmer's market this weekend in the neighborhood, and quite candidly, they were handing out plastic gloves before they would let people in to select the produce that they wanted to buy. I personally have witnessed the litter as a result of the masks and these gloves on the streets, and it's really heart-wrenching because I thought we had made great progress. Now, whether it is a perceived safety effect or real one, certainly consumers are gravitating to that. So somehow we either need to educate people or get away from that. One last question, and then Sam, if it's okay, we'll bring everybody in. Talk about some of the future initiatives that Six Senses is looking at implementing that will help the sustainability efforts.
Sure. So, I mean, Plastic Free 2022 is our big, crazy goal, and we'll be working away at that until 2022. And I'm sure we'll be working away at it beyond 2022, because it is like an incredibly difficult goal, and it's very unlikely we'll achieve it in that time frame. But we're going to go as far and hard as we can on it. We also have some targets set on carbon and climate. Our aim is to follow within the limits set by the Paris Agreement. Being part of IHG Hotel Group, we are signed on to science-based targets, and that means keeping within a certain amount of carbon emissions and reducing our carbon emissions. We have annual energy reduction targets related to our carbon that we set every year, so we'll continue doing that. And our aim moving forward on carbon is to obviously continue to reduce our consumption, but we also want to get much more involved with renewable generation. Our aim, and I think some of my colleagues have alluded to it already on this panel, our aim is really to be a regenerative business. We want our buildings to be as close to net zero as possible, but even better is to generate more, ideally, than what we need. And in terms, as an organization, as a business, each hotel, each resort, we're aiming to be regenerative in terms of giving back to the local community, to have a net positive impact on our local environments and on our local communities. And that comes through that funding mechanism that I've mentioned earlier, through the partnerships we form, through allocating those funds with local NGOs, government agencies, and to be regenerative in every sense of the term.
That is fabulous, Jeff. Thank you for that. This is terrific. I've taken some notes, and certainly we will follow up on that.